It all kicked off on a Friday afternoon with a seemingly minor incident. My 6-year-old daughter, Lily, who's in first grade, usually gets a ride home from school with a friend's mom. However, that day, instead of driving up to our house, the mom stopped on the roadside and let Lily out. Overjoyed to see me, Lily sprinted across the street without checking for traffic, disregarding everything I had taught her. My heart dropped, and I immediately called 911. In no time, both an ambulance and the police showed up. My wife, whom I had been married to for 7 years, was supposed to be on her regular shift at the nursing home. Their strict policy meant she had to lock her cell phone away during work hours. On my frantic drive to the hospital, I called the nursing home to inform her about the accident. To my surprise, I was told that due to some slow periods, full-time staff had to take their accumulated time off to avoid layoffs. My wife had taken her time off that day, yet she left home in her nurse's uniform, leading me to believe she was working. Typically, she would have informed me about any time off in advance. I began to suspect she might have taken on some private work elsewhere. When I called her cell, it went straight to voicemail, which was unusual for her on a day off. Something didn't feel right, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. I left a detailed message about what had happened. I had already completed all the paperwork for Lily, but still hadn't heard from my wife. The emergency doctor sent Lily for x-rays and an MRI because she wasn't waking up, and they feared she might be in a coma. My anxiety was skyrocketing. An hour past her usual shift end time, my wife finally came home. I could smell the fresh soap on her, the kind she used after her morning showers. It was a small but noticeable detail that added to my growing unease. When I asked her if she got my message, she claimed she did, but only later, as she was busy with a patient transfer. Her story didn't add up. I suspected she was lying, but didn't confront her right there and then. It wasn't the time for that. That day, both the nursing home receptionist and my wife had lied to me, and I needed to uncover the truth. As Lily began to regain consciousness after the tests, the doctors decided to keep her overnight for observation due to the length of her unconsciousness. At around 10 p.m., once she was asleep, we went home, grabbing Taco Bell for dinner on the way. After eating and having a cold beer, we went to bed. The next day, thankfully, Lily was cleared to come home with no serious injuries. At the hospital, our family doctor, Dr. Steven Harris, examined her and took his job very seriously. He advised us to schedule a follow-up appointment in 3 weeks, as sometimes issues from accidents could emerge later. His cautionary approach was reassuring, especially concerning a young child. Back home, I questioned my wife again about her Friday. Her answers were vague and unsatisfying. Normally, she'd share any interesting work stories or updates about new patient transfers, but now, those everyday details were conspicuously missing. These small inconsistencies were forming a troubling pattern. Whatever she had been doing on Friday, she clearly didn't want me to know. I began to reflect on the past few weeks, wondering if I had done something to upset her. My wife had a knack for holding grudges over perceived slights. Nora and I had been high school sweethearts. From the first time I met her in junior high, no one else caught my eye. Despite breaking up several times, we always found our way back to each other. Nora had a habit of being drawn to new things and diving into them, which often led to our breakups. I thought it was just a phase she'd outgrow. Each breakup was sparked by her developing an interest in someone or something else. I was on the Jackson High football team and she was a cheerleader. We were the popular couple, and everyone thought we were destined to be together. But senior year, I ended things because I couldn't see a future with her. After high school, I pursued a career with the fire department, climbing the ranks steadily, while Nora worked hard to earn her LPN certification on her way to becoming a registered nurse. Our paths crossed again when I sustained an injury fighting a fire, and 6 months later, we were married. Our daughter was 2 years old when Nora finally became a registered nurse. With her striking dark hair, blue eyes, and an appealing figure, Nora was well-liked for her warm and caring nature. In all our years of marriage, we had never faced any significant issues or conflicts, which made recent events all the more confusing. We had even been talking about having another child. On Sunday, we were invited to a barbecue at a coworker's house by the pool. We got ready by wearing our swimsuits under our clothes and were assigned different items to bring. I stopped at the grocery store to pick up premium franks and buns for about 16 people. These franks were special to me. I always boiled them before grilling to retain their moisture and enhance their rich flavor. They were a hit at every gathering, earning the nickname Smokies for their distinctive taste. While I was in the kitchen, meticulously preparing the franks, Nora was outside, chatting with our host, Sarah, who was the head of the HR department where they both worked. They watched our daughter and Sarah's son playing by the pool with a few other kids. I wasn't paying much attention to their conversation until the end, when I overheard something that struck me like a bolt of lightning. Sarah mentioned Dr. Steven Harris, a popular doctor who used to visit every Friday afternoon to check on his nursing home patients. She said, "Now he only comes when you are on duty, Nora. Some of us are starting to wonder if there is something more between you two. Is there something I should know?" Nora, looking visibly uncomfortable, responded, "No, not really." Her evasive demeanor was a clear sign she was hiding something. "We are just professional friends," Nora tried to explain, though it sounded unconvincing. "He values the detailed reports I send him about his Alzheimer's patients. It helps him manage their care better." "Well, that's not what people are saying in the halls," Sarah shot back. "Whatever is happening, it better stay professional at work. These rumors are getting out of hand. I'll talk to him about it next time I see him." "I have an appointment with him next week," Nora said, before quickly excusing herself to check on our daughter by the pool. Under my breath, I muttered, "She doesn't have a doctor's appointment next week." Sarah overheard and turned to look at me, her face mirroring my own realization that something was definitely wrong. "You heard us, didn't you, Mark?" Sarah asked softly. I nodded. "Do you think there's something going on between them?" "I've noticed some inconsistencies over the past few days. Now, hearing this, it is starting to make sense. She is hiding something." "How long has Nora been taking every other Friday off?" I asked. "About 3 months. She said it was to reduce her overtime hours since most of her extra pay goes to taxes. She also wanted to save her accumulated time off for family matters," Sarah explained. "We in HR approved it because it saves the company money and gives part-time employees more hours." "How close is Nora to the receptionist?" I inquired. "They are best friends," Sarah replied, puzzled. "When I called about Lily's accident on Friday, the receptionist said Nora was taking her accumulated time off because it was slow, and management asked all full-timers to do so to avoid laying off part-time staff. You were misled. We are operating at full capacity. No staff cuts are happening," Sarah said as she poured me a drink. "Nora is definitely hiding something, and her best friend is covering for her." "I really hope my suspicions are wrong," I admitted. "If Dr. Harris is involved, I'll ruin his career, divorce my wife, and fight for sole custody of our daughter." "You're not the only one who suspects something," Sarah said, confirming my worst fears. The nurses at Nora's workplace felt that she and Dr. Steven Harris were too friendly for it to be purely professional. They spent a lot of time together in patients' rooms with the door closed. "If I hear more, I'll let you know," Sarah promised. "Please do. In firefighting, we always say where there is smoke, there is fire. This might just be a mutual attraction that went too far." "Either way, I'm going to find out," I said, finishing up with the Smokies. "Nice try, but I don't think that's going to work," Sarah replied. "I've been in similar situations, and when our instincts tell us something, they were usually right." At that moment, I started to believe I was witnessing the same behavior from Nora that I had seen in high school. If that were true, it could only mean one thing: Nora had found someone new. Dr. Steven Harris joined our local medical practice 3 years ago, taking over from our former family doctor, who had been pushed into early retirement by the hospital due to his age. Nora earned her RN license while working at Southeast Hospital before moving to the nursing home, where she encountered Dr. Harris. For the next 6 weeks, I was on the evening shift, working from 6 to 6, 4 days on and 4 days off. This schedule provided the perfect opportunity for Nora and Harris to carry on without my knowledge. Her recent behavior had created enough doubt in my mind that I took a step I never thought I would. Before grilling the sausages, I texted one of my crew members, asking him to call me in 5 minutes. When he did, I told Nora I needed privacy for a work-related call and moved to the front yard. I didn't want her to overhear the conversation. "Dave, remember the team we assembled to help Mike with his ex-wife a couple of years ago?" I asked. "Of course, Mark. It worked well and didn't take long," Dave replied. "Who needs our help this time?" "I do. Based on what I found out, I think it's been going on for at least 3 months. Nora and the man I suspect she is involved with is Dr. Steven Harris," I explained. "Even her colleagues at the nursing home suspect something. I overheard management discussing it with her, which suggests it's serious. The head of HR even warned Nora to be more discreet at work. Ouch. If they're saying that, it's been going on for a while. I'll start making calls to arrange for us to meet at the fire hall tomorrow when we are on duty, Dave replied. Our sheriff department friends will be happy for something different to do. Remember, Mark, we need to impose the same rules on you as we did with Mike. Stay out of it until we finish our investigation. Any changes in your behavior might tip her off. We met Monday evening in the fire hall meeting room. 6 Sheriff's deputies, 5 firefighters, and 2 police officers were present. I briefed them on what happened Friday and what ID discovered since then. Everyone agreed it seemed like something was definitely going on. I gave them Nora's car description, license plate number, and her regular work hours, from 7 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. They asked me to get copies of our medical records from home for the last 2 years, to check if Dr. Harris was still our family doctor, by looking at the medical billing records. If he and Nora were romantically involved, he should have transferred us to another doctor in their practice. On Tuesday morning, after seeing my daughter off to the bus, I noticed my retired neighbor fetching his morning newspaper. I walked over to say hi and we started chatting. He asked why the doctor had visited us the previous night. I asked if he was sure it was a doctor. He said the person was wearing a white coat when he arrived and left it in the car before coming to our door. He mentioned the doctor was still at our house when he went to bed around 10 p.m. I said I hoped it wasn't anything serious. He suggested I ask my wife about it when she got home. Walking back home, I realized my suspicions were correct. I grabbed my phone, returned to my neighbor, and showed him a picture of Dr. Steven Harris from the medical group's Facebook page. He confirmed that was the doctor he had seen. Nora called later and said she would be home late. I took Lily to my mother's so I could get to work on time. I informed Dave about what the neighbor had witnessed and gave him copies of our medical records and health insurance reports. They confirmed that Dr. Steven Harris was still our family doctor, with my wife's last appointment being 2 weeks ago. The following Tuesday, a few friends came over while Nora was at work and did some work inside the house. I wasn't allowed inside until they finished, so I sat and talked with my next-door neighbor. My neighbor mentioned that the doctor's visit last week wasn't medical. I nodded and said my friends were wiring the house. As we sat and talked, he reiterated that the doctor's visit seemed unusual. I agreed, explaining that my friends were wiring the house, but I wasn't involved in that part. They arranged it this way, so I wouldn't know the specifics because if I knew their plans, I'd be too focused on it, and any changes in my behavior might have given it away. I wish I had friends like yours when I got divorced, my neighbor remarked. It would have saved me a fortune in legal fees. Nowadays, you've got to protect yourself from everyone, even those you trust. It is sad how technology has eroded family values. During the first day of my last 4-day shift to end my 6 weeks of night shifts, my friends showed up at the firehouse with grim news. They even brought one of the top divorce lawyers in town, signaling the seriousness of the situation. The lawyer's presence indicated that immediate action was necessary. Nora and Dr. Steven Harris had been having an affair for over 6 months, and it was escalating. It was time for me to take decisive action. Nora planned to wait until the end of the school year, just 2 months away, before filing for divorce. On the nights I worked, they were either at my house after Lily went to bed, or Nora would take our daughter to her sister's place for babysitting. Nora would then pick up Lily from Steven's house in the morning and bring her home before I finished work. They managed to keep their affair hidden from me. The lawyer was there because of the disturbing plot they were crafting behind my back. With Dr. Steven Harris's help, Nora intended to accuse me of mental cruelty. They aimed to portray me as an unfit father and a danger to our daughter's well-being. Nora, leveraging her professional status, believed the fabricated accusations, supported by detailed medical records they were compiling, would convince the court to grant her full custody of our daughter. She wanted to limit my interactions with Lily to supervised visits only. Her ultimate goal was to provoke such anger in me and my parents that we would choose to cut ties permanently. As I listened to their plans, I couldn't help but wonder what had driven my wife to become so vindictive. The extensive report spanned 60 pages, including dates, explicit photographs of them, several notarized statements confirming their 6-month relationship, and transcripts of their conversations plotting against me. Our strongest evidence was a graphic photo of our 6-year-old daughter standing at the foot of our bed, witnessing them in bed, with both completely unaware of her presence. I decided to have Nora served after my last night shift this week. We would file a complaint with the state medical board against Dr. Stephen Harris on the same day, providing evidence from our billing records that he was still our family doctor during this time. We would question whether he falsified medical records to support my wife's claims of mental cruelty, especially since they discussed setting me up. We had a photograph proving he was having an affair with my wife in front of our 6-year-old daughter. Dr. Harris, a respected man, violated medical ethics and broke the law by falsifying medical records. We planned to send a copy of the divorce petition to local child services, explaining that I was taking my daughter out of town to allow them to investigate without interference. A letter would explain this as a precautionary measure. The state's child services take crimes against children very seriously. All 3 agencies would receive an 8x10 photograph showing my daughter witnessing the affair. I was set to take 3 weeks vacation starting right after this week's shift's end. It was already approved. One of the fire department heads, a colleague, was present when I called my retired parents and suggested we use Dad's RV for a 3-week vacation starting the day after my last shift. I said I needed their help and would cover the costs. They agreed but asked why it had to be rushed. I promised to explain on the way. My new lawyer was shocked when I proposed signing over my parental rights to my parents until the divorce was finalized. He agreed it was a smart move given the circumstances. If Nora had already reported to child services, it would show that my top priority was my daughter's well-being. Until my name was cleared, it demonstrated to everyone, including legal authorities, that I was protecting my daughter first. I will prepare the paperwork, he said, but make sure to have it notarized within 24 hours of serving your wife. I finished my final evening shift and made it home in time to see my wife off to work. As usual, she kissed me on the cheek before leaving. Once she drove away, I quickly made a phone call. Lily and I started packing for a surprise trip. I asked a sheriff's department representative to inform the school principal about our situation and why I had to take our 6-year-old daughter out of school. At 8 o'clock that morning, my parents arrived. We packed our belongings into their RV, and by 9, we were on the road. Out of courtesy, I called Sarah to give her an update. She mentioned that since her conversation with Nora at the nursing home, everything had been strictly professional, and the rumors were starting to die down. I informed her that I now had concrete evidence of their affair, which had been going on for at least 6 months. Consequently, I planned to have legal papers served to Nora at her workplace later that day. Sarah agreed to witness it and keep me informed. Once we were on the highway, I joined Lily in the RV's cozy living area. I handed my mom an envelope containing all the damning details and asked her to read it. My dad, curious, asked, "What's this all about?" I recently found out that Nora was planning to divorce me at the end of the school year, I began. What Mom is reading outlines everything we've uncovered and proven. Her lover is our family doctor, and they were plotting against me. If they had succeeded, I might have lost any chance of seeing Lily again. So we are leaving town because things are about to get very messy, Dad concluded. It is best for you and our granddaughter to be away from all this. Exactly. Nora will be served at work today. The state medical board will receive a formal complaint this morning about Dr. Steven's inappropriate relationship with his patient, my wife. I am alleging multiple ethics violations, and we have strong evidence. Child services will also be notified about everything Mom's reading. If found guilty, he could lose his medical license for at least a year. My claim could also trigger a thorough investigation into every doctor in his practice, Dad explained. Oh my God, Mom gasped. They let my granddaughter see them in the act. I'll handle that woman myself. That doctor's career is over. The whole medical practice will face scrutiny from every government agency, Dad continued. They've made a real mess of things. Nora will be lucky to get supervised visits. Mark, you and Lily will come live with us when you return, Mom insisted. If Nora shows up at my door when your father and you aren't at home, I'll answer with a loaded gun. I'll drive Lily to school and pick her up every day. I loved my mom fiercely. She adored her granddaughter and would protect her family at any cost. She stood up to many who threatened us over the years. Dad drove until we needed gas, about when the tank was half full. I used my credit card to fill up and took over driving, giving Dad a chance to read through the documents himself. He was shocked at the level of detail. I explained about the group we deformed within city services, our second time helping a colleague through a messy divorce. Around 3, we stopped at a trailer park for the night that Mom had booked. These 3 weeks were meant to spoil Lily. After parking and hooking up the RV, I took Lily swimming in their pond. Just as we returned, my cell phone rang. It was Sarah. "Hi, Sarah," I greeted her. "How's your day been?" "Oh, we haven't had such an eventful day in ages," Sarah replied. "Thanks to you, this afternoon, we received news that Dr. Steven Harris has been temporarily suspended from practicing until the state medical board completes their investigation." They moved quickly. I have to give them credit, I admitted. I thought they'd at least call him in for questioning first. They only suspend someone that fast if there is a serious complaint with substantial evidence, Sarah explained. This shows they are taking your allegations very seriously. We might not know the final outcome for a few months, though. Well, I did provide them with all the evidence included in my divorce petition, I explained. At 3 p.m., your soon-to-be ex was served. Right at shift change, I had security informed to expect him and to notify me before letting him in. When he arrived, I escorted him to Nora S. section. The young man asked her, "Are you Nora Carter?" When she said yes, he handed her the papers and said, "You've been served," Sarah recounted. When she opened the envelope, the first thing everyone saw was the photo of Steven and her in bed with Lily standing there watching. She screamed and fainted, Sarah continued. That image hit her hard. "Your lawyer knew exactly what he was doing." "Did the state get a copy of that picture?" I asked. "Most likely, knowing your lawyer," Sarah replied. "Then the state had no choice but to act," Sarah analyzed. Dr. Steven Harris was having an affair with a patient and allowed that patient's child to witness it. Now we're all wondering how long his suspension will last. "My dad thinks he is done for good in our state," I said. "Nora and Steven were fabricating a false medical history to claim I was mentally abusive to her and Lily so she could get sole custody. If they can prove that, criminal charges might follow. It's a mess, but her problems are piling up. Everyone now knows she let her daughter see what she was doing with Steven," Sarah added. "The rumors are flying. Some staff members refuse to work with her. I am redoing the schedule as we speak. They say they can trust her anymore." When she regained her composure, I informed her that the state had notified us about Dr. Steven Harris' suspension by the medical board pending their investigation, Sarah concluded. She was fuming when she stormed out at 3:30. Just wait until she realizes Lily and I have left town, I thought, feeling a mix of relief and determination. Early this morning, I took Lily and left with my parents, following my lawyer's advice. Given the heavy accusations from Steven and Nora, my lawyer insisted it wasn't safe for me to be alone with my daughter right now. Given her job and the wide network of friends she has, she could easily make her lies seem believable, Sarah had remarked. "Those rumors might already be spreading," she warned. "It's often the meticulous details in our reports that have saved our organization legally more than once." We assured each other we'd keep in touch and said our goodbyes. My parents looked at me in shock, as if only now realizing the lengths Nora and Dr. Harris were willing to go. "Mom, can you find the nearest notary SS address in your notebook for tomorrow morning?" I asked. "Why?" she questioned. "The lawyer has prepared documents granting you both my parental rights until the divorce is finalized or my name is cleared. We need them signed and notarized by 3 p.m. tomorrow," I explained. I wanted to let them take my daughter away, no matter what. With tears welling up, my mother asked, "Are you sure about this? It seems drastic." "Yes, Mom, I am," I replied firmly. "Even the lawyer agrees it is the best course. We don't know what those fabricated medical reports contain. For Lily's safety, this is necessary until I am proven not to be a threat to her." My mother started to cry. When Emily got home, she saw her husband's car in the driveway. She switched off her car and braced for the inevitable confrontation. She rang the doorbell, expecting him to answer, but there was no response. After ringing it again to no avail, she used her house key to unlock the door. Upon entering, Nora noticed the house was empty, since her daughter didn't come running to greet her. She pulled a legal envelope from her large bag and read it thoroughly. It was clear that Mark's investigator had uncovered everything. The transcripts of her and Steven's conversations were fully exposed. Steven had acted first and aggressively, but their plan fell apart because the doctored medical records hadn't been released yet. Now, they never would be. Steven couldn't access his files during the investigation, and he hadn't been informed of the complaint specifics, only that precautionary measures were necessary due to the serious allegations. Mark had exposed their affair and their stupidity. No decent person would accept that a 6-year-old had to witness their infidelity. Until now, Nora hadn't realized it had happened. Lily probably woke briefly and went back to bed. Sole custody was now out of the question, but joint custody with primary care might still be possible. The key was to reach Mark and talk to him. Mark was always willing to hear her out. She dialed his number, but it went straight to voicemail. She texted him, but got no response. Calling his parents' house, she found they weren't answering either. Calls to their cell phones were also ignored, confirming they had blocked her. She then called her sister, who picked up the phone. "Hey, Nora, Mark was clever. He sent the entire family a copy of his divorce petition," Claire said. "Mom and Dad are furious. They've read everything and are utterly disgusted by your behavior with your lover. To them, you've gone too far trying to destroy Mark's reputation," her sister continued. "He called them this morning, right after you left for work, to inform them he is taking their granddaughter out of town with his parents. When they asked why, he said, 'Your daughter and her lover have left me no choice. You'll receive a document explaining everything.' Dad," Mark told them, "I am in a legal bind because of Nora, and I have to sign over my parental rights for Lily until I clear my name." Mom and Dad were hysterical when they read it. "Why would you try to ruin Mark's life like this?" "Damn it," Nora muttered. "Does this mean I'll have to fight my in-laws for custody?" "Looks that way," Claire confirmed. "The divorce court can decide on what Mark doesn't have. It seems he's outsmarted you. I always thought he was the kindest, most generous man until he was pushed too far. Then he goes all out. You know how Mom feels about her reputation. This is going to be a long, tough battle. I was expecting a fight, but not like this," Nora admitted. "I thought I had a winning strategy. We all received what you got, a certified copy of the divorce petition, along with a note saying the same was sent to the state medical board," Claire clarified. "You and Steven were trying to ruin him so you could cut Lily out of his life. If you were in his shoes, what would you do?" "Crap," Nora exclaimed. "He's targeting Steven's career and our future. If the board sides with Mark, Steven may never practice medicine in this state again." "Bingo, sis. You've figured it out," Claire said. "He's turning the tables, using your own schemes against you to prove his point. But let's face it, Steven might be your best lay, but the family and I agree. We're staying out of this. We want to support your attempt to ruin your husband's life. Stay away from us until this mess is resolved." Nora was stunned to realize her husband had completely outsmarted her. Her own family had completely turned their backs on her, wanting nothing to do with the chaos she had unleashed. Nora and Steven believed they had been meticulous in covering their tracks, so the legal papers had caught them completely off guard. Nora spent the entire night in a panic, trying to unravel how they had been exposed. Meanwhile, Steven Harris had just come out of a grueling 4-hour meeting with his business partners. They decided to buy him out immediately to protect their practice from the fallout of the investigation. With no clue about who had made the allegations, everyone was operating blindly. Steven pocketed enough from the buyout to start his own practice once things settled. Nora's phone buzzed, and she saw a message from Mark. He bluntly stated he was too furious to talk, and that any further communication had to go through their lawyers. Nora collapsed in tears, realizing her chance to sway Mark into dropping his complaint against Steven had vanished. Meanwhile, my parents and I had just left the notary after transferring my parental rights to them. It cost an extra $5 to have the documents scanned and sent to my lawyer. Out of the blue, I received a call from the family doctor's office. The state had arrived with a court order to seize medical records, but my name wasn't listed. The nurse asked for my consent to release the records related to my family, including my wife's and my billing records. Mom had meticulously planned our trip, ensuring there were plenty of fun activities for Lily each day. It brought back nostalgic memories of our childhood vacations. We parked early again, and with the humidity bearable, Dad and I were outside grilling dinner. Mom called out that Sarah was on my cell. I took the phone and greeted her. "Hi, Sarah. I didn't expect to hear from you so soon." "It's been quite an eventful day here, thanks to you," Sarah laughed lightly. Nora was questioned by state officials this afternoon for about an hour. We used our in-house notary to record, witness, and verify her statement. "That is quite interesting," I remarked. "Is there anything else I should be aware of?" After the meeting, she mentioned she'd be facing a full Liliu by the nursing board for her conduct, Sarah explained. "She's likely looking at a 6-month probation. How will this impact her job?" I asked. Since the incident didn't happen here, it won't affect her job much, Sarah replied. I'll just have to keep an eye on her and report any suspicious behavior. For the next 6 months, Nora will probably submit the best daily reports we've ever seen, but if she does get probation, we'll assign her to the night shift during that period. I chuckled because Nora despised night shifts, as they disrupted her social life. I mentioned that my parents and I were making this time special for Lily. After a brief chat, I promised Sarah dinner once I got back. During dinner, my mother asked what I knew about Sarah. I admitted I didn't know much. She's a single mom around my age, with a son a bit older than Lily. I'm not sure if she was ever married. Sarah and I stayed in touch for the rest of our trip. The day before we returned, I called my lawyer to arrange access to my home to collect my belongings. That's when I discovered Nora had moved out, taking what she wanted, and was now living with Steven. We cut our trip short by a couple of days to get things sorted out, arriving back in Cape early Friday morning. My parents found it amusing and dropped me off at the house, taking Lily to our new place. I started by mowing the lawn, and a neighbor came over with a cold beer before I finished. He mentioned that news of our marriage breakdown had made the local headlines. I called a locksmith to rekey all the locks. I spent the day cleaning up the mess Nora had left behind. I called my mom to see if there was anything she needed from the house. She said no, just our clothes and Lily's. The rest would be sold with the house. I gathered any canned goods and frozen food we had left and dropped them off at the food bank. Then I returned to clean out the fridge. I brought the stuff home, and Mom insisted on washing all the clothes in case they had been tampered with. By around 4 p.m., I picked up my phone. Sarah answered right away. "Hey Mark, you are back," Sarah greeted. "When did you get back?" "This morning. Spent the day cleaning up the house to get it ready for sale," I replied. "I was wondering if you and your son wanted to join me and Lily for dinner. If he was home, we'd love to, but he asked with my mom for the weekend." "I am free though," Sarah said. "Great. I'll leave Lily with my mom and pick you up at 7. "How about Red Lobster or Outback?" I asked. "Red Lobster sounds great," she replied. I dressed up a bit for dinner: a nice shirt, dress pants, and slip-on leather shoes. With our reservation, we were seated promptly. We had a lovely meal, and I learned more about Sarah. She had never married and was raising her 7-year-old son on her own. Her father had been a firefighter. My first day of work was scheduled for Sunday. No decisions had been made yet by the state about Nora and Steven. The longer it took, the worse it seemed. I shared what we did as a family with Lily over the 3 weeks. After dinner, we strolled through downtown Cape to enjoy the nightlife. Around 11 p.m., I got back to my parents' house, and as usual, Mom was still up. On Sunday afternoon, while I was at work, I was called to the office. There was a visitor waiting for me, and I had a pretty good idea who it was. Sure enough, it was Nora, soon to be my ex-wife. "Mrs. Harris, what brings you here?" I asked, subtly turning on the voice recorder app on my phone as I entered the office. "Mark, my name is still Carter," she corrected. "Well, then I guess I am still nothing but trash to you," I retorted. "So what do you want?" "Mark, that's not fair," Nora said, trying to calm the situation. "Your actions speak louder than words, Nora," I replied. "You moved in with someone else the moment Lily and I left for vacation. Witnesses say you moved in the next day. That doesn't scream guilt or remorse to me." "I want to see Lily," Nora demanded. "You will have to talk to your lawyer about that. Legally, I don't have any say anymore." "You're knocking on the wrong door," I responded. "You publicly accused me of harming our child, remember?" "I know that, but you can help facilitate it," she pleaded. "I'm sorry, but I don't think Lily should be around someone who's proven to be deceitful and untrustworthy," I said coldly. "Photos show you in another man's arms while our daughter needs you. Deal with my parents directly. Please leave, Mrs. Harris, and don't come back or I'll have to get a restraining order." With that, I turned and walked out, instructing the staff member on duty to escort her out. I turned off the recording app and saved the file. Later, the staff member told me her face turned pale, and she broke down as he walked her to her car. I explained to him that my reaction was justified based on everything I had heard. If she had taken any responsibility over the past month, she could have cleared my name. Most of us involved in the investigation found her behavior unforgivable. She was nothing but a scheming, greedy woman who had tried to take everything that mattered to me. Late Monday afternoon, I was assisting first responders on a medical call when my mother called. I let it go to voicemail since we were preparing an elderly woman for transport to the hospital. When I got back to the station, I called her back. "Sorry, Mom, I was on a call and couldn't answer," I explained. "I figured. I just wanted you to know that the state officials were here shortly after I brought Lily home. They spoke to her at school today," she said. "They toured the house, inspected her room. I showed them the transfer of parental rights, and we discussed it for a while. I assured them I have never seen you harm anyone." "Thanks, Mom. That's good to know," I said. "I hope you are not upset, but Nora's parents are here and staying for dinner," she added. "Should we wait for you?" "No, that is okay, Mom. Please give them my love and let them know I'll be there as soon as I can," I replied. "Tell them they can have Lily whenever they want, as long as Nora isn't around. It has to be that way until everything is settled in court." I ended up working late because one of the guys on the evening shift couldn't make it until 8, so I stayed to cover. I told him he could make up the hours later. I texted my mom not to wait and explained why. As I was heading home in my Ford Escape, Nora's dad called me. "Hi, Dad. How was dinner?" I asked. "It was great. Both my wife and I enjoyed it," he said. "Mark, my wife and I want to thank you. Emily told us what you said. We are so sorry for what our daughter has done. We promise to honor your terms. Have you spoken to her at all?" "No, not since we received the copy of the divorce petition," I replied. "She came by the station on Sunday demanding to see Lily. I told her it's out of my hands. She'll have to deal with my mom about that." "Oh, and I recorded our conversation. How about I text it to you?" "Please do. I do like to hear it," he replied. So I sent it to him. I guess it made an impact because he forwarded it to my parents, all his kids, including Nora, then sent a text back saying, "The truth was well explained." Living in a small town had its perks. I found out the next day that my wife and I were scheduled to see Judge Gregory Lawson on Friday afternoon at 1 o'clock. He was the toughest, most principled judge in the area. In his courtroom, you could speak your mind, but if you crossed the line, he'd set you straight. It was rumored, but not confirmed, that some people never recovered after facing him. He was a legend around here. People often said he made Judge Roy Bean look like a pushover. My lawyer warned me that with Judge Lawson handling our case, it was going to be more intense than a horror movie. You had to be careful and ready to answer his questions promptly or face the consequences. The judge didn't tolerate slander or insinuations. He wanted facts. With this understanding, we prepared our defense. We were all present as the judge took his seat. Nora's lawyer requested visitation rights for her to see Lily, which required overturning my parental rights surrender. My lawyer argued that I had voluntarily given up my parental rights due to the serious accusations made by my wife and her partner. Since the State Medical Board and Child Services were still investigating these claims, the issue of whether I posed a danger to my daughter remained unresolved. Until the legal system resolves these accusations, any time Mark spends alone with his daughter could be seen as potentially dangerous. Mark put his pride aside and focused on what was best for Lily. Ever since the accusations surfaced, he hadn't been alone with her due to the situation his wife created. We presented a recorded conversation as evidence, with witnesses, where Mark explained that Nora would need to deal with those who now held parental rights, his parents. The judge requested to hear the recording, so my lawyer played it through the courtroom sound system. Nora visibly winced hearing it again. Then, my lawyer submitted a notarized statement from a witness who provided additional context after Mark had left. The judge asked to see the transfer of parental rights, and my lawyer handed him a copy. A slight smile crossed the judge's face as he read it. Turning to Nora's lawyer, the judge inquired, "Is it true that due to his wife's accusations of mental cruelty and emotional abuse, Mr. Carter took these necessary actions?" "Yes, but she was under considerable emotional distress at the time. Now that she's out of the relationship, she has regained her stability," Nora's lawyer replied. "Is this being investigated as claimed?" the judge asked. "Yes, it is. There has been no ruling or resolution yet," Nora's lawyer confirmed. "I all read the statement on the surrender of parental rights," the judge continued. "I voluntarily relinquish my parental rights until the government agencies investigating allegations about my parenting conclude, or until the court rules that I am not an offender." Currently, 3 agencies are involved, correct? "Yes, the State Medical Board, Child Services, and the State Nursing Board," my lawyer clarified. "Interesting. This is a complex situation. How long have these investigations been ongoing?" Judge Lawson asked. "About a month," my lawyer replied. "Given the duration, This isn't just a typical case of conflicting claims, correct? The judge questioned. Yes, Your Honor. On page 32, paragraphs 2 and 3 of Mr. Carter's divorce petition, explain why these three boards are still investigating, my lawyer elaborated. We watched as the judge lily-read the document. His expression turned serious as he set it down and looked at Nora's lawyer. The divorce cannot proceed until all three investigations are complete. I will not interfere with investigations that might result in criminal charges. From what I've read, it appears that one party here might be facing potential criminal actions by the other. This possibility must be considered. It's possible the accusations against one party by the other are unfounded, Judge Lawson stated. The surrender of Mr. Mark Carter's parental rights stands. I commend the wisdom he has shown in court. It takes a special kind of parent to prioritize the child's needs above all else. Mr. Carter did this to protect both his child and himself. Given the questionable conduct of both biological parents towards their child, Mr. Carter felt it was best to remove himself from the situation. Until we review the state reports, no final decisions can be made. Mrs. Nora's request for visitation must be addressed with the child's other legal guardian, who is not Mr. Carter. Court is adjourned, the judge concluded. Nora's face was a picture of fury and disbelief. She clearly couldn't accept that my actions had been legally validated. As we exited the courtroom, she confronted me. Mark, how did you figure it out? Nora demanded. It was a series of small inconsistencies that didn't add up, from Lily's accident to the barbecue at Sarah's, I explained. Remember that Sunday phone call? Yes, why? Nora asked, clearly intrigued. Just before that call, I noticed your behavior was similar to how you acted in high school when you started liking someone else, I recounted. That call I received was in response to a text I sent minutes earlier. By the time it ended, you were already under investigation. Her face turned pale. She hadn't realized she had inadvertently exposed herself. Until then, she believed someone had betrayed her secret. Pay attention to the small details. They reveal the whole story, I said with a grin. Given your meticulous patient reporting, you should have known that. I didn't need to rub it in, but I couldn't resist. Seeing her angrier only widened my smile. After court, I slipped into the men's room and ran into Judge Lawson. I thanked him for his ruling. It was my pleasure, Judge Lawson replied. Once I read the facts, it became clear. Did your lawyer suggest you take that step? No, it was my decision, I replied. Knowing Nora as well as I do, I realized she would stop at nothing to worsen my situation. I felt cornered, knowing she had connections that could influence the outcome. This was the only way I could protect myself. If you hadn't acted preemptively, she might have gained visitation and even custody due to the severity of her accusations, the judge acknowledged. Your proactive move prevented that. I hope your name is cleared soon. So do I agreed. On Saturday night at the fairgrounds, there was a Back to the 60s dance in one of the exhibition buildings. I got a couple of tickets and called Sarah to see if she wanted to join. She said yes, but had to have dinner with her parents first. She invited me and Lily to join them, and I agreed. It had been a while since I faced an overprotective father. Lily and Sarah's son Jake were getting along well, which made the evening enjoyable. Sarah's father was initially quite skeptical. I could tell Sarah noticed because she firmly told him, Dad, give Mark a chance. He's a good man. How can you be sure? He challenged. His ex-wife has made all sorts of accusations, and people are gossiping. Dad, Mark is a firefighter at station number 3, Sarah said calmly. Her father paused, then his expression softened. Well, why didn't you say so earlier? It takes a special kind of person to be a firefighter. Those rumors must be baseless. You're always welcome here, Mark. They offered to keep Lily overnight, but I explained she was due at her grandparents for the weekend. This led to a long discussion where I explained the entire situation. The dance itself was amazing. There is something magical about dancing to classics like Twist and Shout, Beach Boys hits, and early rock and roll. Sarah loved the doo-wop songs because her mother used to play them for her as a child. I walked Sarah to her door. As we said goodnight, she leaned in and kissed me. Mark, I know it's early, but I'm here for you whenever you're ready, she said before heading inside. I got back to my parents' home just after 2 in the morning. As usual, Mom was waiting up. We talked about the night and how much fun I had before I headed to bed. The lawyers finalized the division of assets, and we listed the house for sale. Gradually, things started to fall into place. 3 months after the separation, the pieces began to fit together. The state medical board found Dr. Stephen Harris guilty of several ethics violations, primarily for falsifying medical records for personal gain. His attempt to ruin my life to steal my wife was taken very seriously, and his medical license was permanently revoked. Sarah called me with the news, waking me from a deep sleep. I had just started back on night shifts and had only gotten a couple of hours of rest. I was too excited to go back to sleep. When I told my parents, Mom was overjoyed. As I got dressed, Mom asked, "What is the occasion?" "I'm going to ask Sarah, who stood by me these last few months, to lunch," I replied. Mom smiled and said, "Don't you think it has time we met her?" I arrived at Chateau Nursing Home in Cape around noon, dressed semi-formally. The first person I saw was the receptionist who had lied to me months ago. Her face turned pale as I approached the counter. "Could you please let Sarah Jones know there is someone here to see her?" I asked. I watched as she called Sarah S. extension. A few minutes later, Sarah arrived with a big smile. After greeting her, I pulled her into my arms and kissed her. Hand in hand, we left and went to Logan S. Roadhouse for lunch. "You know we're now the talk of the town," Sarah said. "Nora already found out from the receptionist, who's the biggest gossip in town. That is her problem. Now that I've been cleared, I am moving forward," I replied. "Besides, my new girlfriend might be tired of waiting for me to get my act together." I must have said the right thing because Sarah's eyes welled up with tears. What was supposed to be a quick lunch turned into a long, leisurely date. Later, I found out that after I dropped Sarah off, the receptionist told Nora how happy and in love we looked. Nora's world was about to fall apart. The local news reported during their early evening broadcast that Dr. Stephen Harris and Nora Carter had conspired to falsify medical records against me. Later that week, the nursing board put Nora on probation for a year. Sarah followed protocol and transferred Nora to the night shift. Nora's relationship with Steven deteriorated, especially when she found out she was pregnant. Steven began searching for new job opportunities but found none. He eventually took a position as an orderly at the Lutheran Home for Veterans, working the night shift. On the last night of a 4-day shift, I walked into the station and saw a congratulatory banner hanging up. They had brought someone in to cover my shift. Sarah, her son, and her parents were there, along with our captain. My parents and daughter were also present. I had just been promoted. The process had been delayed because of everything I had been through. This promotion meant no more swing shifts for me. I was now in a junior management position, working regular hours with weekends off. During the party, I overheard Tom Evans telling the captain that if things went well, he might soon be my father-in-law. It took about 2 more weeks before we returned to see Judge Lawson. The terms of the settlement were approved, and my divorce was granted on grounds of adultery. Stephen Harris disappeared one night, leaving Nora alone and pregnant. On Labor Day weekend, about an hour before sunset, I took Sarah for a walk through a local state park. I had something special planned, and as I got down on one knee, she said yes before I could even finish asking. Our families had organized a barbecue party on Monday afternoon at Sarah's house, and I had just finished grilling the hot dogs. While serving them, Sarah's mother, Linda, spotted the engagement ring and hugged her daughter. "When were you going to tell me?" Linda asked. After we finished eating, Sarah replied with a big grin. Tom noticed his wife's reaction and loudly asked, "What's going on?" "Nothing, Tom. Sarah and Mark got engaged." "They are getting married," Linda announced. "We got married a week before Halloween. Nora is now allowed to see Lily when she's with her parents. What no one knows is that legally, my parents and I have regained my parental rights. Nora has to live with the fact that one of her bosses is now her ex-husband's wife. She is not a happy person.